January 1945. A gray sky presses low over a temporary detention camp on the outskirts of Frankfurt. Snow mixes with ash along the frozen ground and the air smells faintly of smoke and damp wool. In a narrow clearing between wooden barracks, a small group of German women stands silently, clutching coats tighter against the cold. Before them lies a shallow metal pit. A guard strikes a match. The flame flickers once, then steadies. One by one, the women are instructed to step forward and place their uniforms into the fire. The crackle of burning cloth cuts through the winter air. For the women standing there, former clerks, radio operators, and administrative workers attached to the Nazi war machine, this moment is more unsettling than captivity itself. These uniforms have been more than just clothing. They had been identity, purpose, belonging. Watching the fabric curl and blacken feels like watching a former life dissolve into smoke. This moment mattered because it marked something far deeper than disarmament. Across liberated territories and POW facilities in early 1945, Allied forces, particularly the Americans, ordered captured German women associated with Nazi institutions to burn their uniforms. The act was deliberate. It wasn't about punishment. It was symbolic. The war was no longer just ending militarily. It was being dismantled ideologically. To understand the shock these women experienced, we have to understand what the uniform meant in Nazi Germany. From the earliest years of the regime, uniforms were tools of psychological transformation. They erased individuality and replaced it with loyalty to the group, to the state. For women, wearing the uniform of a Nazi auxiliary organization conferred status, protection, and a sense of meaning in a society built on strict hierarchy. It told them who they were and who they were allowed to be. They had been taught that the uniform was honorable, that it connected them to the destiny of the Reich, that even in defeat, it should be preserved. But now, under Allied authority, they were ordered to destroy it. The emotional contrast was severe. Many of the women expected humiliation, confinement, or harsh interrogation. Instead, they encountered something quieter, and in many ways, far more destabilizing. The Americans didn't shout. They didn't mock. They simply gave the order, provided the fire, and watched. And the fire kept burning. Historical records from U.S. Army occupation units confirm these actions. Destroying uniforms was a standard part of de-Nazification procedures, especially for women who had served in administrative or propaganda-related roles. The aim wasn't revenge, but separation, forcing a physical break between the individual and the ideology they had worn on their very bodies. Red Cross observers later noted the emotional distress this caused among female prisoners. Several women reportedly hesitated, staring at the flames for long moments before letting go. Some wept silently. Others stood rigid, their faces frozen, as if unsure who they were without the cloth that had defined them for so long. The recurring symbol of this transformation was the sound of burning fabric, a low hiss, followed by the snap of seams giving way. That sound echoed through camps and courtyards across occupied Germany. It became the audible marker of an old system being reduced to ash. What made the moment even more disorienting was what happened next. Once the uniforms were gone, the women were issued simple civilian clothing, plain dresses, coats without insignia, shoes without polish, no ranks, no badges, no symbols of authority. They were addressed not by their titles but as individuals. For women raised under a regime where identity flowed from service to the state, this was a profound shock. American occupation policies emphasized responsibility without assigning collective guilt. The women were not accused as a group. They were not forced into mass confessions. Instead, they were methodically separated from the symbols that had bound them to the regime. The ideology was stripped away before the person was even examined. This approach contrasted sharply with what the women had been taught to expect. Nazi propaganda had insisted that the Allies sought the humiliation and destruction of German identity. Yet the process unfolding before them was precise, restrained, and procedural. The fire destroyed the uniform, but not the woman. The transformation that followed was gradual, but unmistakable. Without their insignia, many women began to question the roles they had played. Diaries recovered in the post-war years reveal a shift in language. Where earlier entries spoke of duty and obedience, later reflections spoke of confusion, regret, and uncertainty. The absence of the uniform forced an internal reckoning. One woman wrote that burning the uniform felt like stepping out of the shadow I did not know I was standing in. Another described the fire as frightening, not because it punished her, but because it removed the structure she had relied on to understand the world. In a way, the burning cloth had become a symbol of American democracy in action, not through grand speeches or brute force, but through dismantling false identities and allowing space for individual responsibility. Democracy, in this quiet moment, did not announce itself with trumpets. It simply removed the uniform and asked the person beneath it to stand alone. As the weeks passed, many of these women were reassigned to civilian labor, sent to education programs, or released to rebuild their shattered lives. The absence of uniforms remained a significant factor. Without them, there was no collective shield. There was no ideology to hide behind. There was only personal choice. In the larger context of the war's end, this small, repeated process mattered deeply. Germany's transformation wouldn't come from victory or revenge, but from dismantling the very systems that had made totalitarianism possible. The uniform, once a source of immense pride, had become a liability. Its destruction marked the first crucial step toward a different future. The epilogue of this story doesn't end at the fire pit. Years later, many German women would describe that moment as the beginning of awareness, not forgiveness. Not absolution, but awareness. The realization that an identity imposed by a state could vanish in smoke and that what remained was something far more fragile and far more real. The sound of fabric burning faded quickly, carried away by the winter wind, but its meaning endured. It marked the moment when ideology was stripped down to ash, and the individual was left standing, not ordered, not commanded, but free to choose who she would become next. And in that silence after the fire died, a new truth emerged, that freedom does not always arrive with celebration. Sometimes it arrives with loss of symbols, of certainty, of uniformity, and asks us to rebuild ourselves from what remains. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the lesser-known moments of history. See you next time.